Good morning, everyone. This is Larry Shulman. I'm a medical oncologist from the University of Pennsylvania and chair of this workshop. And I want to welcome you all back for the second day of this workshop. Yesterday was crammed with critical information, and today will be as well. As you know, the workshop is opportunities and challenges for using digital health applications in oncology. And this morning we have a couple of sessions after my introductory comments, which I'll make in a minute. Session 5 is opportunities to improve data availability and usage in EHRs and large databases, which I'll be moderating. And then we'll have a short break, and then at 10:25, our sixth session is going to be a panel discussion moderated by Lisa Kennedy Sheldon, where we're going to be asking our panelists to give us recommendations for a path forward. And then there'll be brief closing remarks. So welcome, everybody, and we're looking forward to a very important day today. I wanted to make a few introductory comments about the fact that we're living in an era we're all quite familiar with at this point, but I will say that when we started to plan this workshop quite a time ago, none of us knew what the novel coronavirus was. None of us expected us to be here. And we started to plan a workshop that was a little bit different from what it is today. And our view of everything has changed. Some of our speakers have talked a little bit about that. And I'm going to make some comments about what I think are salient points for us to keep in mind. First of all, I've been in this business for a long time, and medicine is very, very slow to change. But COVID really changed that, and we were forced to change a lot of the way we work very, very quickly. And I sort of clumped these into two large categories. One was patient care redesign, how to care for patients in this era of COVID infections, and the other was around data, which we found to be quite lacking, particularly the need for real-time data to help us to understand how things were going in this new world we were living in. We frankly had no previous experience to act on, and that was the big problem. One of the questions that one of my colleagues at Penn asked me a couple of weeks ago was, well, is cancer medicine any different than the rest of medicine? We're all struggling with the COVID pandemic. And that's, of course, is true. But I think there are some things that make cancer medicine a little bit different. One is that many cancers have different degrees of urgency of diagnosis and treatment. A rapidly advancing acute leukemia needs to be attended to immediately, whereas a low-grade prostate cancer may be able to have treatment delayed for a few months. It is, though, a potentially lethal disease if not diagnosed and treated. The prognosis is often linked to stage of diagnosis, so that delaying screening and delaying diagnosis can have negative impacts on patient survival. And screening, diagnostics, surgery, systemic therapies, radiation, surveillance all have complex interactions. They're all interwoven with each other. In addition, cancer medicine, as we all know, has become increasingly complex over the last few years as new therapies have been introduced. One of the ways to think about this is to look at really the spectrum of cancer care, and this is one of the ways we've thought about this at Penn and other places, and I'm not going to go through the details of this, but all of these areas have been impacted by the pandemic. Screening has been stopped, early detection has been delayed, diagnostics have been impacted, and treatment and survivorship and palliative care have all been impacted, some of which I will mention in the next few minutes. So why is medicine so far behind in relation to digital health? Because that is, in fact, the topic of our workshop. And so this is sort of a trite, but I think telling example. For those of you who are old, like me, you'll remember the days when banking was an entirely in-person activity. We went to the bank during, as they say, bankers' hours. Monday through Friday, 9 to 3, and we paid bills by check and mailing them back to whoever the bill was due to. Then eventually ATMs came in and we could get cash out of ATMs. We learned how to direct deposit our paychecks. We learned how to make deposits at the ATM so we could do that any time of day or night and not during the banker's hours. We learned how to make electronic payments through bill pay. We learned how to deposit checks by our smartphone, something I must admit I was very anxious about when I initially did it. And then, as some of you know, I do global work, partly in Rwanda, and I can go to an ATM in Kigali in Eastern Africa and stick my Bank of America card into the ATM. It knows who I am, it knows what my password is, and it gives me money and charges it back to my US account. Something that was inconceivable to us a few years ago. So when was the last time any of you waited in a teller line or went to the bank in person? And my guess is it's been a while, but medicine is really stuck in number one. We still have office hours, largely Monday through Friday during the day. And until the COVID pandemic, almost all of our care was done in person. And technology was not helping us to do the things that we could have done in easier, more convenient, and maybe even more effective ways. So I wanted to talk about a couple of examples of what's happened to us and how we might look at things differently. Clinical trials. Penn has a large clinical trials program, as most academic cancer centers do. And at the beginning of the pandemic, we started to suspend accrual to all but the most critical trials. And patients who were already enrolled on trials and receiving investigational therapies, many of them had their assessments done remotely by telemedicine, including their assessment of toxicity. Patients were consented and enrolled and followed remotely when feasible for new trials. And what we found very quickly was that this increased the access of trial to patients who were not living immediately in our area. And one of the questions that I think we all need to think about, and we'll talk a little bit about later in the program, is will any of these changes stick? Are we going to go back to the banking hours and all in-person work, or will we redesign things for the betterment of the patients? Palliative care has been another interesting story, and this is the Penn story, but I know it's occurred elsewhere. Our end-of-life patients are our sickest patients. They're the ones who have the most difficulty coming in for appointments in person because they're debilitated. And we made a decision early in the pandemic at Penn to do essentially all of our palliative care consultations and ongoing palliative care via telemedicine. We found a couple of things. One is that the consultation rate increased and the no-show rate, which had been a problem in our palliative care world, greatly decreased. You can imagine the story of a patient seeing their oncologist on Monday, being told they should see the palliative care team, and there was an appointment this Thursday. And Thursday came along and the patient just did not want to come back in for another in-person visit. And we found that the telemedicine has been really very, very effective and in fact improved the quality of the patient's lives. We've also seen a decline in the use of late stage therapies. Patients realize that they're comfortable at home and there's a price to pay for coming in to be treated. And we've also had a serious illness care discussion program developed by Atul Gawande's group and Ariadne Labs. And that's actually increased in usage with telemedicine. So this, I think, has been a big success. And the question will be, should we continue to provide palliative care in this way? I also wanted to make a couple of comments about augmented intelligence, chatbots, other manifestations of this. You heard some presentations about this yesterday. And, you know, there really is no fear that doctors, nurses, lab techs, and others are going to be replaced by robots or artificial or augmented intelligence. And in fact, augmented or artificial intelligence should be seen as a companion to the way that we provide care. And in fact, our workforces are quite limited. We need to decide what people need to do and what technology can do as well or better. We've not been good at doing that, but the pandemic has forced us to start to confront these issues, and we should take advantage of them. This need has been exacerbated by the rapid development of technology and therapeutics and complexity of cancer care, and of course, the pandemic has exacerbated it as well. We do, though, need to make sure that technologies are tested for efficacy and safety, and they need to be acceptable and good for patients, improve their interaction with the healthcare system, and improve their outcomes. They also, though, have to be acceptable and good by providers. And this is really a critical point, which many of us have focused on as well. And finally, financials and payment models must support these models of care. And the question is, what will the payers be willing to pay for? And I think we need to partner with the payers in this work to better move the field forward. Long before COVID, we had a National Cancer Policy Forum on the oncology workforce, or what we call care force. And this is a publication that came out of that, developing and sustaining an effective and resilient oncology care force, opportunities for action. And digital technology was highlighted in this article, again, well before COVID. But I think it just brings up the issue that we need to be much more creative and aggressive in the use of digital technology. And finally, data. We need data, and we need it fast. And the pandemic exposed our deficiencies in data. We needed data lifetime to better understand the effects of the pandemic on our cancer patients, either infected with COVID or not infected with COVID, and how alterations in care altered their outcomes. And we needed to safely assess our new paradigms of care for effectiveness and safety. And we've largely been unable to do this because our data systems are not designed to do this. And we need to take this opportunity to realize that we've got to correct this problem. So now what? Providers, regulators, payers, and patients really need to come together and facilitate change. And any of those groups could be a major deterrent from taking advantage of new opportunities to provide better and more efficient, more effective care. And ossified aspects of cancer care, of which I'm afraid there are many, need to be filed with the dinosaurs. So just a couple of quotes as we come to the end of this. One by Albert Einstein, saying, "Bureaucracy is the death of any achievement." I think we've actually made some great achievements during the pandemic, and I hope bureaucracy will not banish them. And then William Osler, "Everywhere the old order changes, and happy they who can change with it." And I think that change is hard, but this is our opportunity to change where medicine has been so slow to change in the past. So thank you very much. We need to learn from this experience. It's been a terrible experience, but we need to get some good parts out of it. And we need to carry forward the good that we've learned during the pandemic. Thank you very much.